Hi there, Michael with you again, Director at Candor Coaching and Head Coach at the 8-Week Life Hack. As you can imagine, I'm sure one of the first questions we ever get asked is something along the lines of, how do I be more productive? Or how do I prioritize family and work? Or how do I get the most out of every day? And of course, how can I fit it all in? So this video is going to touch on a few theories and a few techniques that we use to help you answer those questions. But before I get into it, what I need to say is this. If you are not willing to do the inner work on yourself to understand your core values, your motivators, your reasons, why you do what you do, if you're not willing to do those things first, then all the techniques in the world are only ever going to be quick fixes. They're only ever going to be band-aids for you. Because if you want to become more productive, if you want to know your priorities, you need to understand yourself. And we are the coaches that can help you with that. Okay, having got that out of the way, if you still want some help with this productivity idea, well then this video is going to do that. It's going to touch on three main aspects for increasing your productivity. The first is we're going to introduce the Eisenhower matrix and help you prioritize your to-do list. The second is that I'm going to help you create this idea of a perfect day on paper. And then lastly, we'll take everything we've covered and we'll show you how to schedule your weeks to get the most out of yourself. Okay, so productivity. Essentially what we're talking about there is kind of two parts. One, how do we stay productive to move the needle towards the things that we want to achieve? Yeah, pretty straightforward. And the second part is, well, how do we make sure that our entire life helps us sustain that productivity, helps us sustain that performance? So what I'm going to start with is the idea of an Eisenhower matrix, which helps us work out our priorities, helps us work out what is first and get those things done first. So there's two things I want to kind of cover before we get into that. One is this idea of values and key daily behaviors. If you've done any other work with us, you'd know that's where we start, values first. And then I want to talk briefly about our goal hierarchy structure. So what I'm talking about there is values. We have key daily behaviors that make sure we fulfill our internal values every single day. So they're things like, making sure family is a value, making sure we do things like family first. They're things like health. If health is a value, making sure we keep our fitness up and about and all that kind of thing. It could be things like value, maybe if we've got ambition as a value, making sure that each day we do something that kind of takes us towards ambition or challenge or so on. And then lastly, what's another idea there? Something like commitment. If commitment is a value of ours, making sure that we do something every single day that fulfills that commitment value. So that's the key daily behaviors. The next part is the hierarchy that I want to really briefly talk about. End goals is kind of your dreams or your really long-term abstract goals that you can't really get clear clarity about, but they're there and that's what's driving you. Smart signposts is the next step down. We create smart signposts as that thing to focus on. What's the immediate next step on the pathway to achieving our goals? And then daily actions is we break it all the way down to simple things that I need to do every single day. Daily actions. So an example of that might be, so let's give you an example of what that might look like. Let's say running a marathon. The end goal is the marathon. Your smart signpost might be to hit like a certain kilometers or minutes per kilometer kind of rate. Or your smart signpost might be simply to hit 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers or 30 kilometer runs and building your way up in a progressive way. Your daily actions are simply getting the run done or getting the recovery done or the small things that you need to do to execute to make sure you reach your smart signposts. Now I use the marathon example because it's really straightforward, it makes a lot of sense, and I can just easily kind of talk about the numbers. But most people watching this video thinking about productivity or reaching goals in a career sense, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay in that theme, and for the rest of this time I'm going to be talking about career related things. So let's talk about daily actions right now, yeah? What I'm talking about with daily actions is things like in your career. Let's say that at the moment you're trying to get 6 new clients, or you're trying to get 6 new people into the business or whatever it is, the work that you do. You might know that means you need to make 140 calls a week, which means you need to break that down into, say, 20 calls a day. Let's say you don't do weekends, that means you need to break it down to 28 calls a day. Yeah, so your daily actions are 28 calls. That's all you need to do. So those things fall into this non-urgent but important daily actions towards your goals. The other thing that falls into here are your key daily behaviors to fulfill your values. Now, the reason that they're non-urgent is they're not specific towards time. Like there's nothing pending on you right now, but they are incredibly important. And they're the things you need to get done. So this is your Eisenhower matrix. Before I get really stuck into it, an Eisenhower matrix, he's kind of the guy that invented this idea. And what we've got here is your urgent and important tasks, your non-urgent and important tasks, your non-important but urgent tasks, and then your non-urgent and your non-important tasks. And this is essentially a better way to break up our to-do list. I'm sure you've all got a to-do list at home. Having a look at that, it's just one straight line, yeah? We want to break that up into things so that we can start prioritizing and scheduling. So if you're a family man or a mum that works or whatever the case may be, then non-urgent might also be like, time with kids. Now, when I say it's non-urgent, of course, you've got to prioritize it, but it's incredibly important, but it might not be urgent for that day. And so they're the kind of things that go in this box here. Urgent and important are related specifically to things that have to get done now, like the current project that you're working on, yeah? Or things like taxes as the end of financial year approaches, that becomes a more urgent and important task. Or if you're trying to buy a new house, yeah, then getting all your papers and everything ready for the mortgage becomes more urgent the closer the time gets. I hope that's making sense to you. So there you kind of, what's related to the time tasks go over here. So that's things like work related this week or things that are due today, yeah? We want to look at stuff that is due. Next, we're looking at urgent and non-important. So this is all your stuff like, getting back to emails and all kind of your tedious tasks. Yeah, tedious tasks. Urgent, but not important. Returning phone calls, all that kind of stuff. And then your non-urgent, non-important is kind of everything else. And yes, you still need to get it done. If you're an entrepreneur that works for himself, then you are in control of all this. If you're a manager at a company, then perhaps you can delegate some stuff, and I'll go through that just now. So the idea of the Eisenhower matrix is to prioritize your to-do list. This is the stuff that moves the needle towards the goals you want to achieve. This is the stuff that needs to get done today or tomorrow. This is the stuff that needs to get done in the background, essentially needs to happen, but not incredibly straight away, and this is the stuff that you'll get to it when you can. Some people look at this and the words that come to mind are do, decide, delegate, and delete. You might have heard of that before, the 4 Ds. Here I go with schedule, this one. I go with delegate, that one, but also if you work for yourself, then this needs to be like a second scheduling. And then here I just go with list. Put it back on the generic to-do list that you've got going on. So do now, schedule, delegate or schedule for later, and then list and worry about it at another time. Doesn't seem productive, but it's the only way to kind of get it done. And then we take our to-do list that's been rearranged and given more direct, are we scheduling it or how are you getting it done now? And we have a look at creating our perfect day. Now, the perfect day theory is this idea of, okay, if I've got a day where it's not interrupted by anything, how can I take this and get as much done in my day as I'd like to get done? And here is going to really start making sense on these things that I've spoken about here, like your key daily behaviors and your daily actions. So for things like key daily behaviors, let's say health and fitness is one of your values. Key daily behavior is getting your workout done. So this is where we start scheduling that in. So let's say you go to the gym, first thing in the morning between 4 and 5. And then maybe your key daily behavior, as I said, is hanging out with the kids. Maybe their bed routine is kind of, 7 till 9. And so you've got bed routine here, kids. Yeah? And then because you get up so early, you want to make sure that you've got your own nighttime routine that follows. And so you schedule that in as well. So that's your key daily behaviors and fulfilling your values, and having a look at that, commitment will be fulfilled because you're committing to these things and they're the things you want to get done. And then next we might look at, okay, well, what about your daily actions, which remember are the daily actions that are going to make you reach your SMART signpost, which means you end up getting your end goal. And one of the examples that I gave was making the phone calls. And so what we want to do, and this is how I go about it, you may schedule it at a different time. So for instance, I am at my best first thing in the morning when I get in the office. You may work your best in the afternoon. That's up to you to decide. But I schedule 3 hours between 8 and 11 to get my daily actions done, to get my calls done, to get my emails done, not my return emails, but my actual like reach out, get new clients, all that kind of thing emails. Yeah, and I set my 3 hours there. So that's my non-urgent, but incredibly important. We're setting those things first. And time with kids, I kind of spoke of that before. So you can see I've gone non-urgent, important things, schedule them, and I've got them in my day. Next, we want to set aside time for the urgent and important. What is urgent today and important? Typically, I would give myself a good 30 minutes here for my urgent and important. Sorry, I'm just going to redo all this and say, so this is non-urgent, important, non-urgent, important, non-urgent, important, non-urgent, important. I schedule half an hour in here to get urgent, important things done, and then I give myself another 2 hours later in the day to get the urgent and important tasks done. Now, you may notice some of these daily action style things might migrate into urgent and important, and some of these non-important but urgent things may migrate to become not urgent and important eventually. And the same thing happens here, non-important, non-urgent. You know, so a non-important, non-urgent task for me right now might be something like next year's tax. Yeah, it's just we're about 4 or 5 months into the year, so I'm kind of putting this together into the financial year, so we're too far away from the next one. But slowly, this is going to become, you know, next year's tax is going to become non-urgent, non-important, going to turn into urgent, non-important, until eventually it's going to be urgent and important. So you've got to keep those things in mind. That's how that matrix works as well. So you can see with that list and the way that this matrix works, and I said it kind of makes its way through, you know, this doesn't get put into your perfect day. But the way the matrix works, eventually it'll migrate until it is in your perfect day. The last box, non-important and urgent that we need to schedule right now, obviously the tedious tasks and things like that. If you've got a team and you're a manager, you can actually delegate. But in the case that you don't, you know, you'd want to set yourself aside maybe an hour or maybe 2 hours for the urgent, non-important, urgent, not important. And then you can see how we've taken our to-do list and we've created a disciplined day, a perfect day, where if we execute this every day of the week, we'll achieve the things that we need to achieve. Yeah, and not only that, but we've given ourselves this good old-fashioned buffer time in case things go long, in case things take more time, or in case phone calls happen, or so on and so forth. And we've given ourselves buffer time in between, which is incredibly important to be able to have that room to move, room to negotiate. And then finally, the third step, taking that perfect day and turning it into an ideal week, turning it into your scheduled week. The first thing that I start with is going back to this idea of urgent and important, having another think about it. But these are the things that you can't cancel. You know, the things that pop up every week that we all have to do that you can't get rid of in your day. So that might be like, you know, your partner might have scheduled you in for a dinner with friends. You might have a family lunch on a Sunday. You might have a car appointment, and maybe you've got you got yourself your 2 hours of mentoring or coaching on a Tuesday. Yeah. So these are the things urgent and important, because by the time we get to that day, they are urgent and important, and you blank them out. And then what we try and do is take this perfect day and insert it on our work days. Remember, we're trying to achieve work things here. So you take that and you go, okay, well, gym every day, gym. I'll just leave Saturday and Sunday. So non-important, urgent, and then daily tasks, 3 hours every day, 3 hours every day, 3 hours every day. Get those things done. What have we got? You can tell I'm doing the non-urgent, important things here, and then bedtime stuff. So essentially getting home needs to be covered. Yeah? You can see how that works, I'm sure. Then we insert the rest of it. Okay, what about the urgent, important things? We got a little bit here. Urgent, important, a couple of hours here. Now, the things that I kind of set aside didn't really get in the way, but you can see an example here would be, okay, urgent, non-important, at 3 o'clock this time here. Let's go urgent and non-important. It gets in the way, so we probably put it beforehand, yeah? because this is already in place and we have to do this. And then fill in the rest. So you can see I've gone from to-do list, given it a bit more clarity, turned it into a perfect day. If I execute this day every single day, I'm going to achieve my goals. And then I've created this ideal week of how I can get these things done through the week and be more productive. Now, the three key things that I want you to think about in this moment is, for work, career, and goal progress, so that's your non-urgent important task and some of the urgent important tasks, Parkinson's law, it's an economic law, it's not a law of nature or anything, but it's this idea that the time that you allocate to a task is how long the task is going to take. So it's incredibly important that you stay disciplined and execute those 3 hours only. You've probably heard of Tim Ferriss and the 4-hour work week. The idea is that you can achieve so much in a 3-hour period as long as you're focused, as long as you do it right. Yeah, especially so 3 hours as well, you probably want to break that up into two, let's say 75-minute kind of efforts or not a 90-minute effort with a break in between. I normally recommend 5 minutes of work to 1 minute of rest. So in that period, you want to make sure, if you're doing 90, you want to go away and you want to take 18 minutes of rest. If you're doing an hour, you want to take 12 minutes of rest, just to kind of recoup and make sure you get your, can stay on top of your cognitive effort. 3 hours. Make sure you stay disciplined to the 3 hours. Make sure you execute that time only, because if you give yourself more time to do it, Parkinson's law comes into play, and that's how long it's going to take you to do the task. If you give yourself less time to do it, you're giving yourself an hour here to do the urgent and important things. It'll only take an hour to get it done. The second thing that I want you to think about is knowing the difference between discipline of making sure you get the task done, but then having some leniency and rolling things over. So let's say a daily action for you is, as I said, 28 calls a day to reach those 6 new clients. If for some reason, let's say your chiro appointment was right smack bang in the middle of this and you only got 14 calls done, have some nous, have some idea about yourself and what needs to happen as to whether there's discipline of executing that anyway, cancelling the chiro appointment and executing the 28 anyway, or is it okay to roll that 14 over and do 42? 42? Yep. 42 on the next day. Yeah? So discipline, do I stay disciplined and execute, or do I have a bit of leniency to roll it over to the next day? An indicator here might be if you continually are rolling over, we'll then have more discipline. But at the same time, you want to make sure you've got enough room for these important things that pop up in our lives. So they're the two things to take into account in regards to work, career, or goal progress. And then performance. The last thing that I want you to think about is making sure you've got enough buffer room. Making sure you're doing enough things for yourself to refuel. Because what happens is, if this is performance, especially cognitive at work, your mental effort, you need to make sure that your foundations, which are things like fitness, which are things like health, which are things like sleep, which are things like emotional intelligence and emotional health. So spending time with the family, fitness and running, having deep conversations, getting yourself a psychologist, whatever it is, you want to make sure that the base foundations are big enough to be able to handle the performance and the cognitive effort that you need to be putting in. So make sure that some of these things are getting done and are in your week, and you've got enough buffer room to have that recovery as well. That is going to make you more productive. Okay, so pretty straightforward. You want to become more productive. The first thing to do is take a look at your to-do list and prioritize it in a way that gives you urgent, important, non-urgent, important. Yeah, non-negotiable, things that need to happen now, things that you can do a bit later, things that are going to eventually come into your list. Second step, create a perfect day. Create a day where you've allocated time to get everything done, and then take that time and that day that you've allocated, apply a couple of these laws. Firstly, Parkinson's law, the time you've allocated is how long it'll take. And secondly, knowing when to be disciplined and knowing when to give yourself a bit of leniency. And create an ideal week so that you can get all these things done, so that you can get all the things done you need to do to be productive and reach the goals that you want to reach. And then at the same time, making sure that one big part of productivity and performance is having that base foundation big enough, sturdy enough, strong enough to allow for the cognitive performance in your work and in your career. Really quick and easy ideas about you getting more productive, about you prioritizing your time, about you getting the most out of yourself. Like I said though, if you haven't spent time uncovering your values, if you haven't spent time understanding yourself deeper, this stuff's only going to be a quick fix. You need to work on that. And of course, Candor Coaching or 8-Week Life Hack, both of them great sources for you to begin that journey. And there will be all kinds of links and so on below this video for you to get involved.